All right, let's jump right into this. For years, literally years, tech enthusiasts have been asking, is this finally the year of the Linux desktop? It's a running joke at this point, right? But honestly, when we actually look at the data, the hardware benchmarks, and just the overall vibe in 2026, that joke is starting to look a lot like reality. In today's Explainer, we're going to unpack exactly what's driving everyday PC gamers to ditch the operating systems they've used forever. Plus, we'll look at the cold, hard facts of what it actually takes to game on Linux right now.
Take a look at this recent tech analysis quote. Every second update adds some unwanted AI feature, breaks something crucial, gets recalled, and the cycle repeats. If you're using Windows 11 right now, you are probably nodding your head. I mean, the frustrations are very real. Whether it's the privacy fears around Microsoft's AI recall tool just snapping automatic screenshots of everything you do, or just the absolute exhaustion of being forced to use a Microsoft account to log into the hardware you paid for with your own money, the friction is really adding up. Gamers just want to play their games, you know? They don't want to wrestle with their operating system.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The Windows breaking point. 2. Choosing your Linux flavor. 3. The magic of Proton. 4. Hardware. AMD versus the rest. 5. The anti-cheat barrier. And finally, number 6, the final verdict.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the Windows breaking point.
So why on earth are people suddenly willing to learn a completely new operating system? Well, it really boils down to this feeling that you're losing control over your own machine. We aren't just talking about minor bugs here. These are intentional design choices. You might hear them called dark patterns. Think about it. You open your start menu and boom, you're greeted with full-screen ads. You try to set up a brand new PC and you're forced through this endless maze of prompts demanding a Microsoft login. Then you've got background bloatware just eating up your system resources. Oh, and let's not forget the OS totally ignoring your preferences, like that incredibly annoying OLED taskbar bug where the system just keeps unhiding the taskbar after every restart, putting your expensive monitor at risk of screen burn-in. It's exactly this kind of stuff driving PC gamers toward the speed, snappiness, and privacy of Linux.
Moving right along, Section 2, choosing your Linux flavor. Okay, so let's say you've hit your breaking point and you're ready to switch. The very first hurdle is the sheer, overwhelming number of Linux distributions, or distros. Let's simplify this whole landscape. Enter the immutable OS. This is basically the modern solution to an old Linux problem. Distros like Bazzite use this architecture, and what it means is that the core system state is locked down tight, like militantly locked down. You can't just stumble into a command line and accidentally nuke your system by deleting a crucial file. Instead, your applications run in these isolated little sandboxes, like Flatpaks. It gives you this console-like idiot-proof experience. It protects new users from themselves, all while keeping the system incredibly stable.
So how does this actually translate to your choices? Well, on the beginner-friendly side, you have options like Bazzite and Nobara. These give you a fantastic out-of-the-box experience. Nobara, for example, has this built-in driver manager. That means swapping out your graphics card is literally as easy as clicking a single button, no command line necessary whatsoever. But then on the enthusiast side, you have distros like CachyOS, which is built on Arch. These take the training wheels completely off. We're talking customized kernels and bleeding-edge performance tuning tailored right to your specific CPU architecture. Basically, you just pick the flavor that matches your comfort level.
Which brings us to Section 3, the magic of Proton.
Look, an operating system is essentially a paperweight without games, and historically, PC games were built exclusively for Windows. Enter Valve's translation layer, Proton. You can think of Proton as this lightning-fast, real-time language translator. Here's how it works. Step 1. Your game asks Windows to draw a graphic using DirectX. Step 2. Proton jumps in, intercepts that complex Windows command, and translates it instantly on the fly. Step 3. Linux effortlessly executes that command using its native graphics API, Vulkan. The crazy part, it happens so seamlessly that the game genuinely believes it's running on a Windows machine. And here is the absolute kicker. Proton isn't just a band-aid. A lot of the time, it's actually an enhancement. Because it completely bypasses all of Windows' heavy background tasks and telemetry, Proton can deliver incredibly smooth gameplay. Valve has done some serious heavy lifting directly inside the Linux kernel, handling things like atomic spin locks and aggressively pre-caching shaders. To put that in gamer terms, it means the near-total elimination of those awful shader compilation stutters that ruin so many modern PC ports. You frequently get frame-time consistency that flat-out beats running the game natively on Windows. How crazy is that?
All right, let's talk about the physical gear in Section 4. Hardware, AMD versus the rest.
Now, as amazing as software magic is, it can only go so far. If you're actually making the jump, you really need to know that not all graphics cards are treated equally in the Linux ecosystem right now. Let's look at the performance drop when you move from Windows to Linux across the big three GPU makers. The AMD Radeon 9070 XT? Virtually zero performance drop. None. It runs flawlessly because AMD fully embraces open-source drivers that are baked right into the Linux kernel. But then, look at NVIDIA's RTX 5080. You're looking at roughly a 15% performance regression. And the Intel Arc B58? That one takes a massive 30% hit.
Let's dive just a bit deeper into what those numbers actually mean for your moment-to-moment gameplay. With the AMD 9070 XT, your 1080 and 1440p performance is just excellent. Zero compatibility issues. The NVIDIA 5080? It's good, but you're relying on their proprietary drivers, and benchmarkers are reporting some significant stuttering, specifically in heavy Unreal Engine 5 titles like RoboCop. And then, there's the Intel B580. The performance is poor, and in tests with major titles like Starfield and Doom, the games just completely failed to launch or they crashed straight to the desktop.
I really want to emphasize this 30% performance penalty for Intel users. It effectively means your GPU is performing a full tier lower simply because of your operating system. Actually, there's a fun fact from our source material. Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux himself, actually uses an Intel Arc in his daily driver setup because it offers quiet cooling while he's coding. But for gamers, right now, Intel drivers on Linux are a highly frustrating nightmare.
Which leads us to the tough stuff. Section 5. The anti-cheat barrier.
To make sure this explainer is completely hype-free, we have to objectively outline the severe limitations that are currently holding the ecosystem back. Frankly, if your daily workflow relies on these specific tools, a full switch to Linux is going to be incredibly painful. First up, hugely popular multiplayer games that use kernel-level anti-cheat. Games like Valorant or the upcoming Marathon, they simply will not boot. Period. Are you a content creator? Well, the entire Adobe Creative Cloud is completely off the table. Gato streaming hardware? The native software doesn't exist for it, which means devices like the Wave XLR or their teleprompter become super glitchy or lose core functionality. Even standard stream setups face friction with native HDR display capture when you're using the Wayland display protocol.
But here is the vital nuance you need to understand. This is not an inherent failure of Linux as an operating system. These games and applications are fully capable of running through those translation layers we talked about. They work absolutely perfectly, right up until a developer actively decides to block the compatibility layer. So what we're looking at is an industry battle over proprietary roadblocks and market share, rather than a defect in the OS itself. But, regardless of whose fault it is, at the end of the day, as a consumer, you are the one locked out.
Okay, let's wrap this up. Section 6, the final verdict. So what's the actual actionable recommendation here? Well, these are the two most realistic migration paths today. On one hand, you've got dual booting. Honestly, this is arguably the best of both worlds in 2026. You keep a stripped-down, isolated Windows installation that acts purely as a dedicated launcher for those stubborn anti-cheat multiplayer games, and you do literally everything else on Linux. On the other hand, if you really only play single-player games, or if, say, 90% of your work just happens inside a web browser, a full switch is entirely viable right now. That path grants you total privacy and a snappy, bloat-free system. And really, it all comes down to this final, provocative question. Linux in 2026 is faster, it's more user-friendly, and it's more capable for gaming than it has ever been in history. But it still requires a willingness to learn, to tinker, and to occasionally scour a forum for a fix. You really have to weigh your daily frustrations with Microsoft's tracking and bloatware against the effort required to truly own and control your PC experience. So, are you ready to trade ultimate convenience for complete control over your hardware? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you next time.